Third nullifier from nullifiers of the fast is intimacy. Intimacy, performing intimacy during a daylight period of Ramadan. And this right here is the most severe of sins committed by a fasting person. The most severe of sins committed by a fasting person. And because they're the most severe of sins committed by a fasting person, Islamically we say there are 5 things obligatory upon a person if they violate their fast by performing intimacy. The first thing we say that falls upon a person who violates their fast by performing intimacy is that they're sinful. That's the first thing. What have they committed? They've committed a grave sin. Secondly, his fast is invalidated, meaning that his fast is no longer valid. The third is that even though his fast is invalid, he must continue his fasting because this period right here is a sacred period, which is why we say not only are you sinful and not only is your fast invalid, lakin you have to continue with your fast. The fourth is that you have to now make up for this day that you have violated your fast with. You have to make up for this day. So this particular day, you have to make it up for outside of Ramadan. That's the fourth thing. And the fifth is that not only do you have to make it up, but you now have a kafara, an expiation that you have to pay. And the kafara, as we're going to go through, is of 3 stages. Lakin, here we have a question. Who does this apply to? Does it apply to the man or does it apply to the woman? Because it takes how many to perform intimacy? 2. So therefore, is it obligatory? Is this kafara obligatory upon the man or the woman? In brief and in summary, what our fuqaha rahimahumullah ta'ala, what they say is if a woman has had intimacy performed with against her will, and she did not want this to take place. Why? Because it's, what are we in? Ramadan. Not only that, the daylight period or the night period, the daylight period of Ramadan. And she tried her best to make for this thing not to take place. Lakin, it still took place. As we're going to come to it, it is not obligatory upon her to make up for the kafara, to perform the expiation. Neither is she sinful, neither is her fast invalidated. Lakin, along the way, if she all of a sudden finds some sort of pleasure and enjoyment and she goes along with it and she has a change of heart, then we say the kafara is obligatory upon you. Does that make sense? So if it's against her will, there's no blame upon her and she's not sinful, neither does she have to make up for it, neither does she have to pay the expiation. The kafara is of 3 stages. The first is for a person to emancipate and to free a slave. The second is for a person to fast 60 consecutive days. How many days? شهرين متتابعين. 60 consecutive days. The third is if he's unable to fast 60 consecutive days, he has to feed 60 poor people. So the kafara, the expiation that we speak about here is of how many stages? 3. The first is to emancipate and free a what? A slave. And this does not exist in our time today. As the ulama of the Sharia outline, and they say that slaves do not exist in this time that we live in today. All that really exists is human trafficking, and other different things. Lakin, slavery in this day and age, as it was before, does not exist. Which is why a person moves on to the second stage of fasting how many days? 60 consecutive days. And if he can't fast 60 consecutive days, he feeds 60 poor people. What about a person who can't find a slave because they don't exist? He can't fast 60 consecutive days and he can't feed 60 poor people. What do we say? We say that this person, the kafara falls off of his shoulders. The kafara, the expiation, it falls off of his shoulders, and all he needs to do is perform tawbah and do the remaining which was to make up for your fast and for you to preserve your fast till the end of that day. And when we say 60 consecutive days that you have to fast, we're talking about the lunar calendar. Yeah, we're not talking about January, February, March, Gregorian, yeah, solar, la. We're talking about the lunar calendar. And these 60 consecutive days must be done consecutively. Yeah, does that make sense? Everyone understand English? Yeah? What does consecutive mean? Huh? Back to back. What that means is, if a person on day 15 out of 60, yeah, says, you know what, I'm going to take a break. Inna Allah Ghafur Rahim. And he says, tomorrow, inshallah, I'm going to fast. We say, now you have to start all over again. You understand? And a person is not permitted to take a break and to pause and to cut off the consecutive 60 days, except for one of three reasons. Except for one of how many reasons? Three reasons. The first is لِصَوْمٍ wajib, for an obligatory fast. An example of this is a person, he had 60 consecutive days to fast. He started on the 15th of Sha'bān. He started on what day? 15th of Sha'bān. If he finishes till the end of Sha'bān, how many days has he fasted? 15. What then starts? Ramadan. Ramadan is an obligatory fast or a voluntary fast? Obligatory fast, and therefore he has to fast the month of Ramadan. After he fasts the month of Ramadan, and then after he celebrates the day of Eid, from the 2nd of Shawwal, he must continue with his 60 days of fasting. So he starts off with day number 16. So that is the first reason, which we said is for an obligatory fast. If he stops for an obligatory fast. The second is لِفِطْرٍ wajib, for him to stop that fast for an obligatory day in which you are not allowed to fast. Yani it's haram for you to fast this day, like the two Eids. So, going back to our example, a person, he starts fasting from the 15th of Sha'bān up until the end of Ramadan. Up until the end of Sha'bān, the 30th of Sha'bān. How many days has he fasted now and he's got in the bag? 15. He then starts Ramadan, he's finished Ramadan. The 1st of Shawwal is what day? The day of Eid. The day of Eid, is it permissible to fast? It is impermissible to fast that day. And therefore we said he starts from the 2nd of Shawwal. Does that make sense? The third is لِعُذْرٍ يُبِيحٍ, for a legitimate excuse. And a legitimate excuse is if a person is sick, or if a person goes on a journey. So if he becomes sick on day number 15 and he started on the 1st of Sha'bān, day number 16, he's become sick. We say that it's okay. You can continue with your numbering and the accounting of days, because you've stopped here and you've stopped because why? For a legitimate reason, which is the fact that you became sick.